I know procrastination is not biblical, but why is the Bible silent about Jesus's daily routine or anyone scheduling? Did anyone in the Bible plan out their day like productivity gurus say? As we go through the Gospels, we read that Jesus is going around and he's teaching in synagogues. So I wouldn't say the Bible, and this wouldn't even just apply, when I think about this now, it doesn't just apply to Jesus, right? I'm thinking about other people as well. So we hear in the Gospels, we hear in Acts, for example, that, for example, someone like Jesus would frequently go to the synagogue and teach, or someone like Paul, for example, like clockwork, for periods of time, every Sabbath would go to the synagogue and reason. He would argue, he would converse, he would discuss with the Jews, right, about the things pertaining to Christ, etc. Right, that's a sort of schedule, a routine that he had. There are elements of routine all the way throughout the scripture. I'll show you a passage in a moment which I think is quite significant in relation to this as well. But at the same time, one thing I'll say also is, which is kind of adding on to the point I was making before, when you think about what Jesus does throughout the Gospels, it may not necessarily always be telling us like, this is what he did today, and then this is what he did the next day, and then the third day, and then the fourth day, and then the fifth day of the week. But we can see and begin to piece together how what his life, as he started his like earthly ministry on a public scale, began to look like. So if you think about it just from like a broad level, first and foremost, right, the Jews had feasts every single year that they took part in, right? Let's just take, for example, like Passover. Everyone would come to the temple, everyone would come to Jerusalem, right? So at a set time, certain times at different parts of the year, their schedule, if they were obedient and they were trying to complete the law, right, and be devout, they would have their schedules booked in that regard, right? And if you now start going deeper into that from that sort of higher bird's eye view, at those particular seasons, and this is where we read examples like during like the Feast of Tabernacles in John's Gospel, right? During that period in time, Jesus is coming to the temple, right? Like those feasts, for example, would now dictate and outline the plans for what the people would do. Okay, so they're going to come to Jerusalem. They're going to stay for, let's say, for example, a week and a half, 2 weeks, right? They're going to take part in the feast. They're going to see family, etc., congregate, and then be on their way. In those scenarios, they're doing things towards a schedule. And we see so much of that sort of stuff, which, because it's not laid out like day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, we may miss the fact that there's a consistent nature which is actually happening over and over again, opposed to things like seeming random. Another thing I'll say, I guess, as I continue to answer that question, which I said already is a really good question, did anyone in the Bible plan out their day? I feel like some of the things I've kind of said can kind of help you understand that. The passage which I thought about first straight away when I read the question was a really important passage, I believe, in Ephesians chapter 5, which talks about how we should treat our days. And I spoke about this particular verse in a recent video I did about how to, I gave this as an example. Actually, it wasn't this, it was the verse before, but notice this verse here. This is Ephesians 5:16, and notice what it's talking about. Let me even actually move this up, right, just a little bit, because this will actually add to the point. So in this passage, this is the key verse we're going to speak about, redeeming the time because the days are evil. But it says before that, see then, so pay attention, walk circumspectly, which is like being wise, right? Not as fools, but as wise. So be doubly wise, as I like to say. And he says, and again, how can we be wise? He says, redeeming, which is like buying back, getting back the time that we have every day. Why? Because the days are evil. So when you think about a passage like this is being classified as the wise thing to do, right? It's a wise thing, Paul is saying here, to redeem the time, to buy back the time. What is that? To not waste the time that you have every single day. Why? Because the days are evil. Procrastination, right, is robbing you of time. Things that we spend days, like our days sometimes, like wasting time, that is robbing us. That's stopping us from redeeming the time. So when you think about in a scenario like that, right, it means that to plan out your day, there's nothing wrong with planning out your day. There's nothing wrong with having some sort of schedule and all these different kind of things. It's actually, based on a passage like this, a very wise thing to do. When you read a book like, which not a lot of people read, but a book like Chronicles, right, you see like a lot of the framework of how God ordered the temple service. And this really goes back to the book of Exodus, right? When you start reading from about Exodus chapter 25, towards the end of the book, from 25 to chapter 40, God is outlining, look, this is what we're gonna, this is all of the stuff I want you to do in the tent, right? The traveling church, as I called it recently, just to help people understand. It's like a traveling church, if you want to put it like that. And he is giving them instructions. At this point in the day, right, make the offering. Then you do this. If you read about like the temple as well, which is it's all basically the same thing. A lot of the productivity hacks are really things which you can find in the Bible in one way, shape or form in order to help us redeem the time because the days are evil.